There was at the art school where I happened to be.
In Glasgow?
In Glasgow, Scotland. An old 35mm projector. So I begged an old print of a commercial film, soaked it in the family bathtub for about 2 weeks, so no one could have a bath for 2 weeks, to get off the emulsion, to make it clear. And then I painted on it. Painted with colors and inks, India ink, directly onto it with brushes and a pen. And I got dancing colors and shapes when it was projected, and I was very excited by this.
Fiddle-de-dee was not the first he did in this way, but it is one of the best. In McLaren's words, an interpretation of the spirit of the music.
People sometimes say that Len Lai, the artist, was the first to employ it as principal, and that therefore you perhaps copied him, but I believe you didn't at all.
No, Len Lai is the first person to make it. And Color Box is a beautiful film. And I think I saw Color Box about a year after I'd done my hand painting on film.
This is when, about
1937, I think. And I was terribly excited by his film.
Because you realized that he was somebody else doing the same sort of
Yes,
thing?
and he'd done it so beautifully, too. Mine was very tentative. My first things were not good. Well, as soon as I saw his, I realized how much better they were.
McLaren is too modest about his own work, but it's possible to see in the comparison that Fiddle-de-dee's playful and gentle shapes would never march brashly about like these of Len Lai's.
I was doing quite a lot of metamorphosis in my pen drawing directly on film. But apart from the metamorphosis, there was quite a lot of action going on. One thing was butting into another, or jumping around, or doing various things. But I got curious about the possibility of doing a film that depended not on action, but on change. In other words, metamorphosis. And it so happened that at that period, around about 1947, the film board had a series of French-Canadian folk songs to do. They had already recorded them, and they asked me to do some of them. And there was this song, which was a very slow song. Now, to animate slowly is terribly difficult. It means thousands of drawings for an action. And I thought the normal type of animation won't work in this way. It's too much work. So I thought of using a series of mixes or dissolves, a film entirely of dissolves. As soon as one dissolve is finished, another dissolve begins. I placed the camera facing a wall. I stuck a card on the wall, and I did a drawing with pastel on the card. I photographed that drawing and then faded it out. Then regularly and gradually I changed it. But each time I made a change in the drawing, I photographed it again, fading it in and fading it out. So the whole film was a series of fade in, fade out, fade in, fade out, fade in, fade out. So it was all just moving, very slowly changing shapes.
The hen he seems to love reappears, and in McLaren's interpretation changes its disguise, dividing, fracturing, and finding itself again in the egg.
I read somewhere that your films usually start with a technical challenge you pose yourself, and then you try and solve it.
Yes, that's very true, and it's very significant and important to me that there is a technical challenge. It triggers me off, and often I have to investigate the technique first, and then find the subject matter afterwards. But formerly, I'd been used to drawing on clear film. And in front of my grids, I could register the image from frame to frame. But I thought of making a film on black film. So there was no means of registration of the image from frame to frame. And I tried an image here and left about 10 black frames and another image there and 10 black frames and projected it. And I got very excited by the result because there was a sort of continuity. The image that I drew here, here, and here were related. They were changing in form, like so that, but the relationship showed up even with the 10 blank frames. Sometimes we got very excited about trying 2 frames and 3 frames and 4 frames. Because on each of the 4 frames, for instance, the image would change a little bit. Or they might be completely different images. But when that went on the screen, you saw a sudden burst of image. It gave you an overall impression, a sort of subliminal impression. The last frame of the frame cluster was the most important. It lingered longer in the eye than the others. And the first frame lingered next, and the in between frames were almost lost.
From a cage, a bird escapes. The cage and the bird change shapes and chase each other, meet and challenge and threaten in collisions that could be either hatred or love. But at last the bird and his opponent give up the fight and mate. And from the mating flow the usual consequences: hearts and flowers, and the one, the whole, the egg.